So, Stephen, I know you have a background in like higher education and with children's mental health. Can you tell me a little bit on how that got you involved into the AI space? Because you have a really unique perspective when it comes to being an AI influencer.
Yeah, I guess that through higher education, I've always been working in that space and really interested about how people learn and also around the transformation that systems and technology can have to organizations. And I think that comes from, I don't know, maybe being a child and being given early access to home computers through school and at home. And I think that kind of got me hooked in the idea of how technology can change. Worked on a lot of systems and processes and automation, and that took me into children's mental health as well. And I think seeing the impact of technology on of children and their mental health then also got me deeper interested. And it was kind of a natural evolution that as artificial intelligence started to explode, then that it was a natural pathway for me. And I think particularly that combining how the impact of artificial intelligence on children and young people's experience and particularly learning kind of tied all those things to me for me together. And yeah, really excited to be in this space. And I love that it's changing and evolving all the time. So that's an addition.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. That's awesome. And when it comes to like technical background, I know that you were in higher education, but were you technical at all before discovering AI and
No.
doing what you're doing now?
No, I have never been technical, much to my some of my family members who are technical, and that no, but I think that's a really good message for within artificial intelligence. You don't have to be technical either to explain it. You don't have to be technical to work in it. And if we look at the future, then we're all going to be working with artificial intelligence. It doesn't mean that you need to be technical. It doesn't mean that you need a computer science degree.
Mhm.
I think it's about kind of it's like when computers came along or when calculators came along, you didn't need to have a computer science degree to be able to work with them. So this is just for me the next evolution of that technological change as we've gone through time.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. And when it comes to what you specifically do, which is help trying to educate parents on how to educate their children on how to use AI. And with you just saying now that you didn't come from a technical background and you were able to pick this up, learn it, and now you're teaching it. So,
Mm.
what would you say is like a really good starting point for a parent who's not even aware of really AI, but knows, hey, it's going to be the future. My children are going to be using it. What can I do to better prepare them?
Yeah, and no, absolutely. And I think that's also what generated some of my interest as well with my daughter getting into that age group and thinking about how I can advise her. But I think to answer your question, then I think that taking that standpoint of you don't need to be technical at all, and AI is everywhere. And I think that being a parent trying to kind of take time out to explain things separately from your everyday life, with your children, I know with my children, it's very hectic. So being able to start those discussions and just integrate them into everyday life. So we're all surrounded by AI, whether we might be aware of that or not. So kids perhaps with or family with a Netflix account or Amazon Prime or other types of platforms, that asking your children, well, why is it recommending you those videos? And very starting a discussion around that. And that is simply AI works. Part of the way it works is by recognizing patterns or thinking about for those who are a little bit more advanced, a little bit more technical, thinking about, well, you're making a sandwich or you're making breakfast, and you're following a set of instructions, maybe to make cookies, and about combining ingredients and following instructions. That's fundamentally what AI is doing. And then thinking about, well, when it gets it wrong, and when it gets it right. So that I think starting with what's around me, what's in my hand. I've got Siri, maybe in your house. You've got Netflix. You've got YouTube. Whether your account is free or not, it's going to do the recommendations. So using those things immediately around you, I think is easy as a parent in any parenting thing, but particularly with AI. And I think it helps that kind of get over some of those perhaps myths or some of those concerns that they parents may have that they're not that technical, as you said.
No, that's awesome right there because it's just giving practical advice like, hey, you can just take your everyday things that you do and then figure out how to either incorporate the thinking of how is AI behind this, or even using AI to maybe help like make cookies, baking, breakfast, whatever it is. Just very
Yeah.
simple things to get the kids excited. One thing I do with my children, and they call my chat GPT Mr. Robot. What we do sometimes is so I have three daughters. I will have each of them talk into ChatGPT, telling them the story that they want to hear. And they'll just go in and say, it'll be some absurd story, but
Yeah.
ChatGPT then knows, hey,
Yeah.
it's a kid, they want a bedtime story, and then it delivers the message in like, I don't know, 30, 45 seconds, a story that's entertaining to them. They enjoy it, and they almost feel like they co-created the story in a way.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's a great example. I might use that one for one of thank you for that. No, that's great.
Yeah.
I think another way of doing it is as well as thinking using it. AI is a great tool for not just young kids, but for anybody to brainstorm ideas. So maybe they have a paragraph to write on, I don't climate change, or a short story to write. Just being able to brainstorm for ideas then can help speed up the thinking process. And I think that's a kind of what AI is doing for whether it's a lot of us within our work or within business, with any type of form of use of AI, particularly around generative AI. Then it's a great way of being able to speed up our thinking, so we can focus more time on thinking around what we really want to do. I had a conversation recently with a mother of a teenager who's finishing his high school, and she was talking about what impact is AI going to have in product design. And it's like, well, basically, AI is going to give people, product designers, a whole load of more automated data. They don't have to spend time getting it, which will then make the designs more human-centric. But fundamentally, it's going to free up a lot more time, to a lot more creative thinking time for the designers to do it. And that's been similarly the case in other creative subjects as well. I think it's an interesting myth around AI stealing creativity versus actually being a tool for creativity. And I firmly believe the latter. And I think that's what also can be good introductions for kids as well. Like you've said the creative with ChatGPT, using being creative to create stories, thinking about videos from texts very simply with ChatGPT's functions, or if video from text, or image from text, and then starting a discussion around it. So using just those kind of ideas work really well. Even creating an avatar for those
Mhm.
who are a little bit more confident, and then starting conversations around it. What did you think of that? What did you know? Is it right? Does it reflect the real world?
Yeah, and I think it's super important to really talk about this because I was at a AI presentation lunch and learn the other day, and the speaker there was talking about AI in its totality, but he touched on a very, very specific point later in the talk, which was schools being very behind or
Mm,
totally against the use of AI, thinking that it goes against their like code of ethics, that they're cheating or whatever.
yeah.
And so because of that, and just because it takes schools and these big organizations so long to pivot to the times,
Yeah.
it's very imperative, in my opinion, that parents learn this so that way they can properly prepare their children for the future and just supplement their education with the AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a case of um, for parents as well to talk to their schools about AI, and how it's used. Is there a ban or not? I'm completely against bans, because kids are going to use AI no matter what. It's like kids were going to use calculators, computers, whatever is in front of them, and go on social media, whether it's banned or not. It's about then training them to be using it responsibly. And then, sorry, went off my point a bit, but kids being able to engage with their school and saying, is it banned? Is it, are teachers trained to use AI? How are teachers using AI? AI is particularly generative AI is fantastic for teachers to be able to speed up their processes of creating lesson plans. And are are teachers being using it, perhaps tools, AI tools, actually within the classroom? And also, what AI is within the systems that the school might be using around the administration? There's a whole debate around ed tech that was thrown at schools in the US and also in the UK, and then thinking about issues around data privacy, et cetera, et cetera. that may be slowing down some of the thinking around the incorporation of artificial intelligence. But yeah, I think it's like mental health in schools. My experience was that support for mental health and emotional well-being was incredibly varied. That could go down to the teacher, the quality of the counselor,
Mhm.
let alone the board, or let alone however the school was governed. So yeah, I think that parents really do need, and the fact that it's like like the fact that it's available on a cell phone for older kids, the fact that it's there and available. I really, going back to the social media analogy, let's help our kids work with it and understand it.
Mhm.
If you ban it, they're going to go there anyway.
100%. And it'll be doing them kind of a disservice, because when they go into the workforce, everything by the time these young kids
Yeah,
are in the workforce is going to be automated, and they're going to have to learn how to manage these
absolutely.
systems.
Absolutely. And you've seen that in your work, working and consulting with companies, then that challenge that people are having right now of adapting to AI because they haven't got that background,
Mhm.
this is only going to increase. And so the sooner you get your kids in that space, and develop how to work with AI responsibly and give them that confidence, the further they're going to enhance their career opportunities.
Yeah, and there's even AI tools for teachers that parents could use as well. Like one that comes to my mind is, I believe I'm pronouncing it correct, eduaid.com or
Yep.
.ai.
Yep. Yeah, I
Basically,
can't remember, but yes, good.
yep.
Yeah.
You can basically go on there, create your lesson plans, create quizzes, games, a bunch of things that'll just be
Yep.
automated for your classwork. And parents could use that because it gives you the templates as a teacher would
Yep.
use, that they would
Yep.
have to do manually, and then it'll automate everything, you
Yeah.
know.
And then there's the Google Education platform as well, where they've been developing things that, whether that's for younger kids, things like Quick Draw, where you draw something and it guesses what it is that you're drawing. And that's a great example of, well, that's just basing, it actually does two things. It shows kids that AI is recognition of patterns again, but then also it shows that it's working off a database, and that every time they draw, that feeds into the database. So they contribute to the development of AI as well as understanding in a really quick and fun way
Mhm.
at that level.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so, what would you say is like the best age to start introducing this to your child? Because obviously they need to be able to spell, read, write.
Yeah, yeah. I think as well, being able to be in that time, in that space in their lives where they're able to have a critical discourse, maybe too grand a word, but actually engage in a conversation. So for me, I think it's around about that age of 8 or 9. I know that there are coding programs that, again, that's only one, again, repeating, and only one aspect of AI in the build space, but there are coding programs out there that go as low as 5 years old, and they're particularly structured around that. Say Scratch Junior, Scratch also has a program for older kids. But I think in terms of the engagement around the debate, it's around about that 8 years old, where they're able to have some form of discourse or discussion around it and take meaning out of it.
Okay. And in your line of work, like what you're specifically doing with AI, what are some, I guess, basic advice that you would give like a parent or even a teacher, or not a teacher, but a kid who maybe is a little bit older and they want to start using it? Like, in what way? I know you gave some examples before, but let's say like now they want to actually make this a part of their daily routine to
Yeah.
properly skill up their child or skill up themselves.
Yeah, I think it's one thing I was actually just thinking about the other day around doing a post on for slightly older kids is they're having exams and thinking about using generative AI such as ChatGPT or Gemini, and that to help them build a schedule to talk about their strengths and weaknesses around when they're studying, and out of that they could have an exam preparation schedule, something that would give great value to them and also help them in terms of developing that critical thinking around asking the questions of AI, really challenging its output, questioning, is that going to work for me? Does that sound real? Looking at other things and comparing them. So that would be one thing for older kids. I think For younger kids, it's more of uh, there's a I think it's probably getting them to experience it through the games and activities, which are and doing things with characters from books or stories that they're familiar with. So picking up what they really like. But again, going into generative AI or cutting out a long word, just something like ChatGPT to experiment with it.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
And
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 so,
and maybe as we talked about earlier, sorry to cut across you, around if they had a paragraph to write for school,
right,
helping ChatGPT to brainstorm ideas, as we mentioned earlier, and then to help. Maybe another thing could be if they had lots of different thoughts or lots of different notes to try and help organize them. So I think kind of linking it, yes, for younger kids, there's fun, but then the older kids linking it to forming how it can to help them with the tasks they have to do in front of them that actually are serious around schoolwork, I think is probably a good approach. And actually, they see the benefit from it, and they start to see they're interacting it within a way that's more mature, in a way that they'll actually be interacting with it in the future.
right. So, what would you say to the parents out there, just people in general who are like, I don't necessarily want my child to interact with AI because it'll take away their real creativity. It'll lessen their brain power because they can delegate that responsibility to a machine, or just for whatever reason there may be that people can come up with to say, I don't know that AI is the right thing for my child because it's going to take away that real life experience.
Yeah, I think it's maybe about, again, taking their real life experience and then using AI within it. I think there is always going to be fear of new technology, and I think it's really understandable with artificial intelligence because it is happening at such a speed. It has really come into everyone's consciousness in the last particularly even 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I can understand that fear and that worry. I think I would go back to the point of they're going to be using it anyway, whether it's they're going on to college or whether they're going from school into work, they will be interacting it within some way. I think that there's also it's then um, positioning it around it's giving examples of how it can stretch their thinking or develop their critical thinking. And instead of making it lazy, putting in a prompt and then asking the prompt questions, that develops critical thinking.
Yep.
That's okay, it's an AI skill, but it's actually it's going to be a really important skill in the future.
Mhm.
But it's actually a great skill to have regardless of AI. So actually the skills that they can develop around curiosity and critical thinking with AI are life skills. So it's going to give them an advantage just by using it, let alone, and if they didn't use it, they would have not have that advantage, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Now, what would you say is like, from your experience, is the biggest misconception around AI?
I think it's around waiting and around what age, and that I understand that. I understand it from my daughter's point of view and around wanting to protect her as that natural feeling or emotion as a parent. And I think then that plays into waiting and delaying. And I think that is for me because it plays into a basic instinct. I think that's the big one and the big and the biggest challenge to get through.
Hmm, that makes sense. And so, how would you say, how did you overcome that?
Um, I think it's about recognizing that seeing the two things that AI can develop skills that they're going to need that aren't about life, as I was saying earlier, and that actually, if the kids don't learn about AI and are particularly going into the workforce or going into college or even in a few years' time, that the schools are going to be much more linked into AI and using it, they're not going to be in a position to progress because they're actually going to be behind.
Hmm.
So I think those two kind of key factors for me would be my key persuasion points if I was having this debate with a parent.
That, yeah, no, I agree with that. And another thing that I want to kind of touch on here too, from maybe playing devil's advocate for the parents who aren't necessarily full game for AI being used with their children, one critique that they may have, or a rebuttal to all of this, is I don't want my child to have a bunch of screen time. So how would you differentiate that between AI, between like social media and actually using AI?
And this is, you've hit, really when I was talking, I was thinking we need to be mentioning screen time here, and thank you for bringing that up. It is the Achilles heel in the argument, because I think at an older age that that they're particularly going to be surrounded by screens, whether they're doing their homework, whether it's their cell phone, watching television, and parental concern. But I think it's AI has the opportunity to, you could use AI and just mess around, and in this, and but generally your interaction with AI for a younger person is going to be in some form of generative AI. So it's going to be generating something. So they're going to that's very different to doom scrolling on screens. And I think that often screen time and the debate around social media can often get quite blurred. And I think that what we have to be saying around with AI, that AI is a tool that they're going to use for a purpose. Yes, there comes later concerns around what tool they are using, data security, who owns that data, where does it go? But then we can also get kids asking those questions around, okay, before I use a tool, who owns this tool? What's its actual purpose? Is it going to give me the purpose that it wants? And who controls the data? And again, that gets them thinking responsibly. So it's that action for a tool that is very separate to doom scrolling on social media. So I think that's an important point for me that I would pick up there with a parent like that.
Yeah. And, I was listening to recent Sam Altman talk, and one of the things that he touched on was how different age groups use artificial intelligence, specifically ChatGPT. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if you've seen that, but he said,
No, it's on my watch list.
yeah, you got to watch it. It's really good. He said one of the biggest things that he's noticed is that younger people, like let's say mid to late teens to early 20s, they are really using AI more so like an operating system for their life. Like they're not making any real big decisions without incorporating AI in some type of way. And I think that it's very important because I believe, this is my belief, it could be wrong, that there has been like a huge disconnect with families, with wisdom that's been distilled throughout years. It's kind of gone away now, and people feel more, for a lack of a better word, just atomized as opposed to united. And it's just it. An AI will allow, I think, a lot of, and the younger kids are realizing this, an ability to actually maybe retrieve some of that lost wisdom because everything is stored in there with the databases that is on the internet. So you can pull a lot of things from there and regain some of those things that maybe you don't have that great connection with your mom or your dad or somebody to really consult with. You can use that tool if you are able to prompt it right and instruct it accordingly.
Yeah, no, I know it's an interesting point, and that I think where perhaps culturally being able to ask for help, whether that be with an elder, then AI has a great opportunity. And particularly where there is perhaps available, there's a whole debate around whether AI should be being used to counsel for students to go as being a therapist, for want of a better phrase. And that's happening significantly in China and Taiwan, where culturally, generally, that kind of conversation is much more difficult to have with someone in your immediate family or a friend. AI is absolutely revolutionizing that, given people. But again, that's where we need to come at this with, okay, there are, even that you might have a AI model that's designed to be a therapist, that it's still a generative model. We're still in the early days, and that we need to then be thinking critically about that output. But to have that space and that connection and to enhance their relationships, I think AI is it perhaps, and it's an unexpected benefit that is now being seen.
100%. I use it sometimes to brainstorm or maybe even consult me on hey, here's
Yeah,
an issue I'm facing. Let's break this down. Where are my blind spots? What am I missing? What could I do better? Just constructive
yeah,
criticism. And then it gives great answers, man. It's like, I know
yeah.
it's not a therapist for real, but it's able to
No,
reason pretty well throughout what I give it.
absolutely. I know when I again use generative AI for a similar purpose, for brainstorming or for thinking through an idea, I will always ask, challenge my thinking, don't flatter me, don't assume I'm right. And those three sentences at the end of any prompt, let alone saying ask me any questions, really then start that engagement and that
Mhm.
responsibility around it.
Yeah. And then another good prompt to use as well, I think, especially for kids or even parents, if you're interested in learning something new, you could prompt it to say, act like an expert in whatever, let's say marketing, act like an expert marketer and
Yeah,
tell me what are the core tenets that I need to learn to get a basic understanding of marketing. So that way I can
yeah,
get my knowledge base. And then it'll just
really.
spit out really good information. And then you can just go from there with the info it gives you and then just keep prompting to dissect it.
Absolutely. And I think a really another thing I actually do personally is if I'm facing a new topic, I say, give me an overview on X, give me one overview as the expert, the middle person, which is a bit vague, but then the lay person, and then you get three explanations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of work, I really like Perplexity, because and also having been in a university background where evidence is so important, I really like Perplexity because it gives you the links to the where it's drawing the information from, and then you can therefore read more in depth or critique what you've actually been given as well from the
Right.
source.
Which then also makes like academic level research more accessible to the everyday person,
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, it's the papers that are freely available online. I mean, some AIs actually work behind paywalls,
Right.
and access that information. But no, it's much more of a democratic. Um, I think you were hinting at this earlier, making access to information much more democratic.
This may be a hard question to answer, but I'm curious on your take on it. We're talking a lot about how parents can help their children and how children can use AI to skill up, and it's going to be important once they go into the workforce. How do you see the workforce changing, and like what kind of roles do you maybe imagine there being
Yeah.
as this AI develops?
Absolutely. I think it kind of almost if we start going backwards and look back in time that maybe 10 years ago that there weren't jobs that exist now. Social media managers perhaps wasn't a job, and that it's certainly a very established form of a marketing job. That you, I think the jobs and that's happened over a period of time. What's going to be happening with AI? That I read a fantastic article which talked about that we are going to go through a rate of change that has taken us up to this point, 2000s of human development, that we're going to be going through that within 5 years or slightly less or slightly longer. It is the principle that's important with AI. So predicting now what jobs are going to be in AI in 10 years' time is going to be really difficult. But I think one of the skills, one of the core tenets for me around this is that there are going to be people who will be building the technology, but the vast majority of us in any of our work roles that we're going to have, we're going to be using AI in some form or the output of AI. And I think a lot of the roles will exist around, I was reading an article the other day about healthcare and saying that actually there'll be people who will be AI counselors for health, where people will be interpreting the AI output to then work with the patient. So I think that is going to be that to me seems a very sensible basis that the technology is going to be everywhere. It's those who interact and provide that linking point with the AI. I think is going to be a role that we would see quite across a lot of industries. And I think there's a big fear for I've seen from talking to parents. There's that and talking more broadly that roles are going to disappear. Roles have disappeared in the past, and those roles have been replaced by new roles, and that evolution will happen with AI. And I think there's a big fear of jobs being taken away. Yes, but it's going to create a whole load of new ones and create lots more thinking time. So I think that's the message that's the really positive one. We won't know necessarily what they are, but new jobs will come up. They will replace old jobs. It's not about the number of jobs shrinking at this point.
Right. And I think that it's going to make the global market even more enhanced. Like you'll have more opportunities to work across the world, like you don't have
Mm.
to just be confined to one place. And it's
Yeah.
going to probably enhance remote work and
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen the world change completely for those who are not in jobs that require face to face, and how that's revolutionized it. Hey, we're having this podcast here, and we got to know each other through remotely. So,
right.
yeah, absolutely.
And you do have like a unique perspective because you've kind of worked globally, man. So you have a unique perspective on that. So could you maybe touch on how you're seeing this new AI wave come through and how it's like reshaping the world because you have a bigger perspective on this than a lot of people do.
Um, yeah, I think my real one of my real interests is around international relations and politics, and I think a global and what we're seeing now within the potentially the end of a globalized world, with changes in the position that America is taking, and then how international trade has worked, which has been on the basis of you do something better than I do, so we're gonna trade or barter at a very simple level. Chile has loads of copper. It will sell that to the United States because the United States doesn't have copper, and they make a deal out of it. I think with AI, then there is quite clearly a global race for AI and the development of AI. Then I find it really interesting around what's happening politically around separation, whereas AI, for me, requires a global unified view. We shouldn't be racing to who's going to be protecting the technology, which is what's happening. And in the previous administration in the States put policies in place. That's not a criticism, it's just an observation. And there's quite clearly a stated aim in China and the two big superpowers in the world around what will become an AI race and a chip race and a technology race.
Right.
And for example, one of the biggest chip makers in Taiwan now putting factories into the US.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I That worries me, because I think and I think one of the key challenges around, um, we're going to be working, if it is China and the United States, China and other countries are going to be working in against with democracies in a non-democratic system. That provides its own challenges, whereas you say everything's becoming much more tighter, globalized. And I think the biggest worry that I have is around ethics and privacy and standards. When you're playing in a space which is not democratic, that's very different. So, for example, you have DeepSeek, which has been developed at great speed by China. Great that it's there as another model, but it doesn't give answers on things which are politically sensitive to China. There's also security concerns around data that you share with it because China has different data privacy standards, being run by a communist state. Again, not a criticism, it's just a fact. So we need to have more global collaboration than we've ever had to then particularly to safeguard AI privacy and ethics. And we're already seeing this. There was a conference recently in Europe about that. It came out with a lot of criticism about how little progress they've made. It's challenging enough for countries to work together, let alone doing this. But I think that there needs to be global standards that are developed for the protection and for the future development of AI.
Right. And you even see a lot of countries now, like I think the UAE is one that are like incorporating it in their schools. I even think, I could be wrong, you can correct me on this, but I think Trump also has some sort of initiative with AI being involved in education.
Yep, Trump has. There's been a bill, or I'm not quite sure what the American term for it is,
Mhm.
around that AI will be integrated into schools and having AI trained faculty. China, again, is perhaps one of the most famous ones that they have created, a stated aim that China will have these primary schools and AI will be integrated into it, and they'll have hubs. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. They will have AI hubs that are schools that are specialized, and that's a model that China has used very effectively, to develop not only kind of have very clear top-down strategies which people adhere to, but also to have hubs that develop things they then develop those ideas and then push them out very quickly.
All right, Stephen. So where can people find you if they're seeking help from you to, create their own curriculum or just help their children out?
Well, I'd be delighted to hear from people, and the best way to contact me is by DMing me on my TikTok or Instagram account.
Got it. Awesome. So, and what I'll be sure to do is I'll put that information in the description. That way, if they want to find you, it's really easy. It's just going to be below this video here.
Great.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Awesome. Good talking to you, Stephen.
Take care. Bye-bye.